May 7th, 1915. 2:10 in the afternoon, 11 miles off the southern coast of Ireland, the largest, fastest ocean liner in the world cuts through calm seas at 18 knots. 1,959 passengers and crew are finishing lunch in gilded dining rooms, playing cards in mahogany lounges, strolling promenades that stretch nearly 800 feet from bow to stern. The RMS Lusitania, jewel of the Cunard line, holder of the blue riband, a floating palace so magnificent that first-class tickets cost more than most Americans earn in a year. Then a white streak appears in the water. 18 minutes later, the Lusitania is gone, swallowed by the Atlantic. 1,198 souls dragged to the bottom, including 128 Americans who weren't supposed to be anyone's enemy, and 94 children who never had a chance to become anything at all. The German submarine U-20 fired one torpedo, a single decision by a 30-year-old captain named Walter Schwieger. One finger on one trigger, and the world changed forever. This is the story of how the most luxurious ship afloat became a mass grave, how a German warning printed in American newspapers was ignored by passengers, dismissed by captains, and exploited by empires, how decisions made in Berlin, London, and a cramped submarine transformed neutral America into a nation hungry for revenge. But this isn't just about a ship. This is about the fatal cost of arrogance, the belief that size and speed can outrun consequence, the danger of ignoring warnings because they seem inconvenient, and what happens when powerful men gamble with innocent lives. Welcome aboard the final voyage of the Lusitania, where 18 minutes of chaos dragged a nation into the bloodiest war the world had ever seen. The year is 1897, and Britain is losing a race it invented. The transatlantic passenger trade, once dominated by British shipping lines, now belongs to Germany. The Kaiser Wilhelm der Große has just captured the Blue Riband, the unofficial championship for fastest Atlantic crossing. German ships are bigger, faster, more luxurious. British pride is bleeding. For the Cunard line, this isn't just embarrassing. It's existential. Cunard has carried passengers across the Atlantic since 1840. Now German competitors are stealing their customers, their prestige, their future. Something must be done. In 1903, the British Admiralty offers a deal. They'll loan Cunard £2.6 million to build 2 revolutionary superliners, plus an annual operating subsidy of £150,000. The catch? Both ships must be designed for conversion to armed merchant cruisers in wartime, reinforced decks capable of mounting 6-inch guns, shell storage rooms built into the lower holds, coal bunkers positioned as armor against torpedoes. Cunard agrees immediately. They're not just building passenger ships, they're building weapons disguised as palaces. Construction begins in 1904 at John Brown and Company shipyard in Clydebank, Scotland. The scale is unprecedented. The hull stretches 787 feet, nearly 3 football fields. Displacement 31,550 tons. 4 massive steam turbines will generate 76,000 horsepower, making this the first major passenger liner to use turbine propulsion. 25 boilers consuming 1,000 tons of coal daily. 192 furnaces requiring over 300 stokers working in conditions that would kill lesser men. The ship is designed to slice through waves rather than ride over them, an engineering choice that makes her fast but prone to violent pitching in rough seas. They name her Lusitania, after the ancient Roman province of Portugal. Her sister ship, Mauretania, follows 3 months later. September 7th, 1907. Lusitania departs Liverpool for New York on her maiden voyage. Crowds line both shores, reporters cable breathless dispatches, and she delivers. Average speed, 23.99 knots. The blue riband returns to Britain. Newspapers christen her the Ocean Greyhound. The return crossing is even faster, 25.01 knots. Germany's dominance is broken. For the next 8 years, Lusitania and Mauretania trade records and accolades. First-class passengers pay fortunes for mahogany staterooms, electric elevators, à la carte restaurants. The ships become symbols of Edwardian excess, floating monuments to the belief that technology conquers all, that progress never reverses, that the future belongs to whoever builds the biggest, the fastest, the most magnificent. But beneath the gilt and crystal, the Admiralty specifications remain. Jane's fighting ships list the Lusitania as an auxiliary cruiser. The gun mounts are ready, the shell rooms are waiting. She's registered with the Royal Navy, available for requisition at any moment. In peacetime, none of this matters. Passengers don't tour the reinforced decks or inspect the ammunition storage. They drink champagne and dance waltzes and marvel at the view from promenade decks that seem to stretch forever. Then, in August 1914, a gunshot in Sarajevo sets Europe ablaze. And suddenly, those hidden specifications matter very much indeed. The Lusitania was built for war. She just didn't know it yet. June 28, 1914. Sarajevo. A 19-year-old assassin fires 2 shots into an open car. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria and his wife Sophie die within the hour. Within 6 weeks, the entire continent is at war. The chain reaction is almost mechanical. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia mobilizes to defend Serbia. Germany declares war on Russia. France mobilizes against Germany. Germany invades Belgium to reach France. And on August 4th, 1914, Britain declares war on Germany to honor its treaty obligations to Belgium. A teenager's bullets have ignited a powder keg that was always waiting to explode. Britain's first move is the weapon it knows best: naval supremacy. The Royal Navy implements a total blockade of Germany. No ships in, no ships out. German ports strangle. Imports of food, fuel, and raw materials collapse. By winter, German civilians are rationing bread. By spring, they're eating turnips. The blockade will eventually kill over 400,000 German civilians through starvation and malnutrition. It's slow, invisible, and devastating. Germany needs a countermeasure, desperately. They find one in a weapon so new that international law hasn't caught up to it: the submarine. Germany's U-boat fleet is small, only 21 operational boats at the start of 1915. But submarines change everything. Traditional naval warfare requires surface ships to stop enemy vessels, search their cargo, and allow passengers and crew to evacuate before sinking. Submarines can't do this. They're too fragile. One deck gun on a merchant ship can destroy a surfaced U-boat. The only way submarines work is by stealth. Torpedoes fired without warning, ships sunk before they know they're under attack. On February 4th, 1915, Germany makes its move. Admiral Hugo von Pohl declares the waters around the British Isles a war zone. Effective February 18th, any Allied ship in the area will be destroyed without warning. Neutral vessels are cautioned. Sail at your own risk. Mistakes will happen. Germany cannot guarantee safety for anyone entering these waters. It's the first unrestricted submarine warfare campaign in history, and it's aimed directly at Britain's lifeline, the merchant ships carrying food, fuel, and munitions from around the world. 3,000 miles away, President Woodrow Wilson watches with growing alarm. He's determined to keep America out of Europe's catastrophe. Neutrality is more than policy, it's principle. But American neutrality has a problem. It's fiction. By 1915, U.S. trade with the Allied powers has tripled. American factories ship millions of dollars in munitions to Britain and France. American banks finance Allied war purchases. American farmers feed Allied armies. The trade balance is staggering. $3 billion annually flowing to the Allies, almost nothing to Germany. From Berlin's perspective, America isn't neutral. America is Britain's arsenal, hiding behind a flag of convenience. Wilson responds to Germany's war zone declaration with a warning of his own. The United States will hold Germany to strict accountability for any American lives lost to submarine attack. It's a threat wrapped in diplomatic language. Germany notes it and proceeds anyway. While nations maneuver, the Lusitania keeps sailing. The Admiralty doesn't requisition her for military service. Passenger revenue is too valuable. Besides, her speed makes her theoretically immune to submarines. No U-boat can catch a ship making 25 knots. But the Lusitania isn't making 25 knots anymore. Wartime coal rationing has forced Cunard to shut down one of her 4 boiler rooms. Maximum speed drops to 21 knots. Still fast, but not invincible. The modifications go deeper. Crew members have left to join the military, reducing experienced hands, and the cargo holds now carry more than passenger luggage. Manifests show rifle ammunition, shrapnel shell casings, fuses, all technically non-explosive, all technically legal, all headed for the Western Front. What the manifests don't show remains a matter of debate to this day. In April 1915, Captain Daniel Dow quietly requests leave from Lusitania. The stress of navigating submarine-infested waters has broken him. Cunard recalls William Thomas Turner, Bowler Bill, to take command. Turner is 58 years old. He's been at sea since childhood, survived multiple shipwrecks, won medals for heroism. He's gruff with passengers, beloved by crews, and utterly dismissive of the submarine threat. When reporters ask about the danger, Turner laughs. "The talk of torpedoes is the greatest joke I've heard in many days," he tells them. "The Lusitania is too fast. The Germans wouldn't dare. Everything will be fine." At that moment, somewhere in the North Sea, Captain Lieutenant Walter Schwieger is preparing U-20 for patrol. His orders: proceed to the Irish Sea and sink enemy shipping. The hunter is already moving toward the hunting ground. The prey suspects nothing. April 22, 1915. The German embassy in Washington submits a notice to 50 American newspapers. The text is brief, formal, and unmistakably a threat. Travelers intending to embark on the Atlantic voyage are reminded that a state of war exists between Germany and her allies, and Great Britain and her allies, that the zone of war includes the waters adjacent to the British Isles, that vessels flying the flag of Great Britain or any of her allies are liable to destruction in those waters, and that travelers sailing in the war zone on ships of Great Britain or her allies do so at their own risk. The notice doesn't appear until May 1st, the exact morning the Lusitania is scheduled to depart New York. In several newspapers, the German warning runs directly beside Cunard's advertisement for the voyage. Coincidence? or calculated psychological warfare. Either way, the juxtaposition is impossible to miss. Some passengers cancel. A Boston shoe dealer named Edward Bowen and his wife withdraw at the last minute. A feeling grew upon me that something was going to happen, he explains later. But most travelers dismiss the warning entirely. The Lusitania is too fast, too famous, too protected by her very prestige. Germany wouldn't dare. Among those boarding, Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt, 37 years old, heir to one of America's largest fortunes. He's traveling to London for a meeting of the International Horse Breeders Association and, according to friends, to offer his services to the Red Cross. The morning of departure, Vanderbilt receives a telegram. The Lusitania is doomed. Do not sail on her. It's signed simply Mort. The name suggests death. Vanderbilt shows the telegram to a reporter, amused. Probably somebody trying to have a little fun at my expense. Charles Frohman boards with more difficulty. Broadway's most powerful producer, the man who made stars of Maud Adams and John Drew, is crippled by arthritis. He walks with a cane, climbs the gangway slowly. Asked about the German warning, Frohman shrugs. He has business in London. The show must go on. Elbert Hubbard, 58, is America's most famous philosopher-businessman, founder of the Roycroft artisan community, author of the wildly popular essay, A Message to Garcia. He's traveling with his wife Alice to interview Kaiser Wilhelm himself. When reporters ask if he fears submarines, Hubbard grins. The Germans have done some damned bad things since the war started, but I don't believe they're all that bad. Below decks, the crew loads cargo that tells a different story. 4 million rounds of rifle ammunition, 1,250 cases of shrapnel shells, 18 cases of fuses, all listed on the manifest. Technically legal, technically non-explosive. What isn't listed remains classified to this day. The Lusitania is a passenger liner carrying war materials through a declared war zone. Everyone involved knows this. Everyone pretends otherwise. Noon, May 1st, 3 long blasts from the ship's horn echo across the Hudson River. The Lusitania pulls away from Pier 54. Passengers crowd the railings, waving to crowds on shore. Reporters scribble notes. Somewhere in that human cargo are 159 Americans, 129 children, and dozens of infants who will never see their first birthdays. The crossing proceeds without incident. Calm seas, mild weather. Passengers settle into the rhythms of ocean travel. Elaborate meals, card games, concerts, promenading on decks that stretch nearly 800 feet. Vanderbilt hosts parties in first class. Frohman holds theatrical readings. The Hubbards discuss philosophy with anyone who'll listen. But as the ship approaches Ireland, tension builds. May 6th, Lusitania enters the declared war zone. Captain Turner orders blackout conditions at night. Double lookouts posted, lifeboats swung out on davits for rapid deployment. Some passengers notice, most don't. That evening, the first wireless warning arrives from the Admiralty. Submarines active in southern Irish waters. More warnings follow through the night. Turner acknowledges them, takes precautions he considers adequate. He does not increase speed. Coal is precious. Arrival timing matters. He does not zigzag. The Admiralty recommends it, but Turner finds the maneuver unnecessary. He does not know that U-20 has already sunk 3 ships in these waters in the past 2 days. May 7th dawns foggy. By 11, the fog lifts to reveal perfect visibility. Bright sunshine, calm seas, the Irish coast crystallizing on the horizon. Ideal conditions for passengers taking photographs. Ideal conditions for a submarine captain lining up a shot. 2:10 p.m. Most passengers are finishing lunch. The first-class dining room hums with conversation, silver clinking against china. On the bridge, Captain Turner takes navigational readings off the old head of Kinsale. The Irish coast is clearly visible, 11 miles to the north. Almost home. Then a lookout shouts, a white streak in the water, moving fast, closing. The torpedo strikes the starboard side just below the bridge. The impact shudders through 31,000 tons of steel. A geyser of water, coal, and debris erupts above the deck, knocking Lifeboat 5 clean off its davits. Passengers are thrown from chairs. Dishes shatter. For a moment, silence. The ship holding its breath. Then the second explosion. This one comes from deep within the hull. Louder, more violent. The entire vessel shudders, lists hard to starboard. 15 degrees, then more. Witnesses describe it differently. A boom, a rumble, a tearing sound, like the world splitting open. Captain Lieutenant Schwieger, watching through his periscope, notes it in his war diary. The explosion of the torpedo must have been followed by a second one, boiler, or coal, or powder. Even he doesn't know what he's unleashed. The ship begins dying immediately. Electrical systems fail within 4 minutes. Elevators freeze between floors, trapping passengers in metal coffins. Lights flicker and die in the lower decks. The engine room floods, scalding steam mixing with freezing seawater, killing stokers before they can escape. Third-class passengers, housed farthest from the lifeboats, find themselves navigating pitch-black corridors as the floor tilts beneath their feet. On deck, chaos. The 15-degree list makes the port-side lifeboats useless. They swing inward, impossible to board. Starboard boats swing outward, dangling over the water, too far to reach safely. Crew members struggle with release mechanisms. Panicked passengers don't wait. They jump into half-lowered boats, overloading them, capsizing them, dying in falls they thought would save them. Lifeboat 1 overturns on launch, spilling its occupants into the sea. Lifeboat 14 drops bow first, catapulting passengers like rag dolls. The ship carries 48 lifeboats, more than enough for everyone aboard. Only 6 will reach the water successfully, all from the starboard side, none from port. Captain Turner orders abandon ship at 2:15, 5 minutes after impact, already impossibly late. Alfred Vanderbilt appears on deck with his valet, Ronald Denier. Neither man has a life jacket. Vanderbilt finds one and gives it to a woman clutching an infant. He's last seen strapping children into wicker deck chairs, hoping they'll float. He can't swim. He makes no effort to save himself. His body is never recovered. Elbert Hubbard and his wife Alice emerge arm in arm. A survivor later recalls seeing them stand together at the railing, watching the chaos with strange calm. Someone urges them toward a lifeboat. They decline. They go down together, still holding hands. Charles Frohman, crippled by arthritis, cannot move quickly. Actress Rita Jolivet stands with him as the deck tilts. He quotes Peter Pan, a play he produced, a line he made famous. "Why fear death? It is the most beautiful adventure in life." Minutes later, he's gone. But some fight. Margaret Guire falls into the water and is sucked into one of the funnels by the ship's suction. A boiler explodes, blasts her back to the surface. She survives with nothing but an oil-stained camisole and nightmares that will last a lifetime. 2:28 p.m., 18 minutes since the torpedo struck. The Lusitania's bow hits the seafloor at 300 feet. Her stern rises briefly, propellers catching sunlight, then slides under. The suction drags swimmers down. Bodies, deck chairs, luggage, children's toys churn in the vortex. Then silence. A debris field where the greatest ship in the world had been. Over 1,000 people are now in the water. Temperature, 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough to kill within 90 minutes. The screaming starts. A sound survivors will describe for the rest of their lives. One calls it a long, lingering moan. Another says it sounded like nothing human. Rescue boats are still hours away. The torpedo took 18 minutes to destroy the Lusitania, but the man who fired it watched through his periscope until the end, and what he saw would haunt even him. Walter Schwieger is 30 years old, born in Berlin to a respected family, joined the Imperial German Navy at 18, drawn to the newest branch of service, submarines. By 1912, he commands U-14. By December 1914, he takes charge of U-20, one of Germany's most advanced boats. He's young for the responsibility. He's also exceptionally good at his job. The British call him the baby killer. It's propaganda, but it sticks. Schwieger has a reputation for aggression. Shoot first, identify later. In February 1915, he fired a torpedo at what turned out to be a hospital ship, the HMHS Asturias. He missed. The incident made him infamous in Britain, notorious in Germany. His superiors see a decisive officer willing to take risks. His enemies see a war criminal in waiting. But Schwieger isn't a monster. He's a professional naval officer, following orders in a war he didn't start, fighting with weapons his nation designed, executing strategies his admirals devised. The submarine changes everything about warfare, and the men inside them are learning the new rules in real time. April 30th, 1915. U-20 departs Emden, Germany, heading for the Irish Sea. The orders are straightforward. Patrol shipping lanes around Liverpool. Sink enemy vessels. Avoid neutrals when possible. Schwieger commands a crew of 35 men packed into a steel tube 210 feet long. Diesel engines on the surface, electric batteries underwater. Maximum submerged speed, 9 knots. Endurance, maybe 2 hours before the batteries die. Armament, 7 torpedoes and a deck gun. By May 5th, Schwieger has already fired 3 torpedoes. He sank the schooner Earl of Latham after allowing her crew to abandon ship. The old rules, the gentlemanly rules. Then he sank the steamers Candidate and Centurion. No warnings that time, the new rules. Now he's low on fuel, down to 3 torpedoes, considering whether to abort the patrol and head home. May 6th brings frustration. Schwieger spots the SS Arabic, a large passenger liner, but can't get into firing position. The opportunity slips away. U-20 continues prowling the Irish coast, waiting. May 7th, 1915, 1:20 p.m. The fog that blanketed the morning has lifted. Visibility is perfect. Bright sunshine, calm seas. Schwieger is on the surface, recharging batteries, scanning the horizon. Then he sees it. Smoke. A lot of smoke. 4 funnels emerging from the haze. 4 funnels means something big. A major liner or an auxiliary cruiser. Exactly the kind of ship listed in Jane's fighting ships as a legitimate military target. Schwieger orders U-20 to dive. Through his periscope, he watches the vessel approach. She's making perhaps 18 knots, flying a British flag, not zigzagging, sailing in a straight line as if submarines don't exist. He doesn't know for certain This is the Lusitania, he suspects. The size, the silhouette, the four funnels. It fits. But even if it's a passenger liner, the rules have changed. Germany declared these waters a war zone. Germany warned civilians not to sail. If people ignored the warnings, that's their choice. Schwieger has one job: sink enemy shipping. He calculates the intercept. One torpedo remaining that he's willing to spend. If he misses, the ship outruns him. He has seconds to decide. At 2:09 p.m., Schwieger gives the order. A single G-type torpedo slides from the bow tube. 700 meters to target. Running time, roughly 60 seconds. He watches through the periscope as the white trail streaks toward the hull. The impact is unmistakable. A plume of water, debris, and coal erupting from the starboard side. Then, almost immediately, something else. A second explosion. Larger, deeper. Schwieger notes it with professional curiosity. The explosion of the torpedo must have been followed by a second one. Boiler, or coal, or powder. Even he doesn't know what he's triggered. The ship begins listing immediately. Schwieger watches passengers streaming onto the deck, watches lifeboats being lowered, some capsizing, some crashing against the hull. He records it all in his war diary, the official record that will eventually reach the National Archives. Many people must have lost their heads. Several boats loaded with people rushed downward, struck the water bow or stern first, and filled at once. The ship is sinking fast, far faster than any torpedo should cause. Schwieger has 2 torpedoes left. He could fire again, ensure the kill. He chooses not to. I could not have fired a second torpedo into this swarm of people trying to save themselves. At 2:28 p.m., the Lusitania disappears beneath the waves. Schwieger orders U-20 to dive to 25 meters and leave the area at full speed. He knows what he's done. He knows Americans were almost certainly aboard. He also knows Germany warned them. In his mind, the blame lies elsewhere, with Cunard, with the British Admiralty, with anyone who let civilians sail into a war zone. Schwieger returns to Germany a hero. He receives the Iron Cross. He will eventually earn the Pour le Mérite, the Blue Max, Germany's highest military honor. He will sink 49 ships, totaling nearly 184,000 tons, before his career ends. It ends on September 5th, 1917. U-88, Schwieger's new command, strikes a British mine in the North Sea. The boat goes down with all 43 hands. Walter Schwieger's body is never recovered. He dies at 32, entombed in the same cold darkness he sent so many others to. He never faced trial, never testified, never explained. But across the Atlantic, his 18-minute attack had already set something in motion that no submarine could stop. 2:12 p.m. The Lusitania's wireless operators send the first distress call. Come at once, big list, 10 miles south Old Head Kinsale. The signal reaches Valentia Island, Liverpool, Queenstown. Help is summoned. But help is complicated. HMS Juno, a Royal Navy cruiser, is nearby. She receives orders to proceed to the rescue. Then new orders arrive, countermanding the first. Juno is too valuable to risk in submarine-infested waters. She turns back. The largest maritime disaster in the war zone will be handled by fishing boats and tugs. The decision is militarily sound. It will fuel conspiracy theories for a century. The first rescue vessel arrives nearly an hour after the sinking. The Wanderer, a small fishing boat from the Isle of Man, reaches the debris field and begins pulling bodies from the water, living and dead together. The crew hauls over 200 survivors aboard. so many that the little boat nearly capsizes from the weight. They take 2 of the Lusitania's lifeboats in tow and head for shore. The tug Flying Fish makes multiple trips. Captain Thomas Brierly navigates through wreckage, corpses, deck chairs, steamer trunks, children's toys floating in the calm sea. His crew pulls survivors from the water, transfers them from overloaded boats, ferries them toward Queenstown as fast as the old paddle steamer can move. Other vessels follow: the Elizabeth, the Daniel O'Connell, the Bluebell, a flotilla of civilian boats doing the Royal Navy's job. The water temperature is 52 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to kill within 90 minutes. Many survivors have been floating for 3 hours or more by the time rescue arrives. The screaming has stopped. The sea is quiet now. Queenstown, today called Cobh, is a small Irish harbour town. Population 8,000, completely unprepared for what's coming. The first rescue boats arrive after 8 p.m. Survivors stumble ashore wrapped in borrowed blankets, sailors' coats, anything available. Many are barefoot. Many can't speak. Local hotels throw open their doors. The Queen's Hotel becomes a makeshift headquarters. The Rob Roy fills with the wounded. Private homes take in strangers. Churches become hospitals. The entire town mobilizes in hours. But the living are only part of the burden. The dead keep coming. Bodies pulled from the water, transported in fishing nets, laid on the docks for identification. The scenes are unbearable. Wesley Frost, the American consul in Queenstown, will never forget what he sees. 5 or 6 drowned women with drowned babies in their arms, and the corpse of one mother who had a dead infant clasped to each of the cold breasts which had so recently been their warm, nestling place. 3 makeshift morgues are established. Coffins are mass-produced. Bodies line the streets, awaiting identification by relatives who may themselves be dead. Captain Turner survives. He clings to wreckage for 3 hours, kept alive by Master-at-Arms William Williams, urging him not to give up. The crew of the Bluebell spots him by the glint of his gold braid in the fading light. They pull him aboard, half dead from cold and exhaustion. He refuses to speak to reporters, walks through Queenstown with his head down, hat obscuring his eyes, saying nothing. He knows what's coming. He knows he'll be blamed. Margaret Mackworth survives. The Welsh suffragist and businesswoman pulls herself onto an overturned lifeboat, waits for hours, sings hymns with other survivors to keep spirits alive. Her father, coal magnate D. Thomas, is rescued separately, both live. Charles Lauriat, the Boston bookseller, takes command of a collapsible lifeboat. He uses his sailing knowledge to reach rescue vessels, organizes survivors, demands immediate disembarkation when bureaucrats try to delay them at the dock. Language decidedly to the point, he later writes. He's not waiting for paperwork while survivors freeze. For days, bodies wash ashore, on beaches in coves as far away as the Welsh coast. Fishermen are offered cash rewards for recovery. Only 289 corpses are ever found. 65 are never identified. The mass graves in Queenstown's Old Church Cemetery hold 148 victims, many marked simply unknown. The final toll crystallizes slowly. Of 1,960 people aboard the Lusitania, 1,198 are dead. 61%, 128 Americans, 94 children, 31 of 35 infants, nearly 90% of the babies aboard. Only 6 lifeboats launched successfully out of 48. Over 800 bodies are never recovered. They remain with the ship 300 feet down in the darkness off the Irish coast. The survivors scatter. Some return to America. Some stay in Ireland, too traumatized to move. Some never speak of it again. Some never stop speaking of it. But as the bodies are buried and the survivors are bandaged and the town of Queenstown slowly returns to normal, something else is building. Something the German Navy didn't anticipate. Something that will cross the Atlantic faster than any ship and hit harder than any torpedo. Outrage. May 8, 1915. The news reaches America. New York Times front page. Lusitania sunk by a submarine, probably 1,260 dead. Other papers drop all pretense of objectivity. Pirates murder 1,000. Germans slaughter women and children. Baby killers. Headlines scream what diplomats cannot say. This is not distant European warfare. This is American citizens murdered on the high seas. The reaction is immediate, visceral, and split down the middle. Theodore Roosevelt, former president, Rough Rider, embodiment of American aggression, demands action. This represents not merely piracy, but piracy on a vaster scale of murder than old-time pirates ever practiced, he thunders. It is warfare against innocent men, women, and children. Roosevelt wants war. He wants it now. He wants Germany to pay in blood for what it's done. The current president has different ideas. Woodrow Wilson receives the news at the White House. His advisors divide, some urging immediate action, others cautioning restraint. Wilson listens, deliberates, prays. 3 days after the sinking, he speaks in Philadelphia to a gathering of newly naturalized citizens. The line he delivers will define his presidency and infuriate his critics for generations. There is such a thing as a man being too proud to fight. There is such a thing as a nation being so right that it does not need to convince others by force that it is right. Too proud to fight. The words land like a slap. Roosevelt calls it cowardice. Newspapers call it weakness. Families burying children call it betrayal. But Wilson holds firm. America must stay out of Europe's catastrophe. Moral authority matters more than military action. The path forward is diplomacy, not war. Wilson sends the first of 3 diplomatic notes to Germany. The tone is stern but measured. The United States demands that Germany disavow the attack, compensate the victims, and cease unrestricted submarine warfare immediately. Germany must acknowledge that American citizens have the right to travel freely on the high seas, even aboard belligerent ships. Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan thinks even this goes too far. He argues that Americans who boarded a British ship carrying munitions through a war zone accepted the risk. Sending strongly worded notes could drag America into a conflict it wants no part of. Bryan resigns in protest. Wilson replaces him with Robert Lansing, who takes a harder line. Meanwhile, Germany defends itself with characteristic bluntness. The official position: the Lusitania was a legitimate military target. She was listed as an auxiliary cruiser in Jane's fighting ships. She was carrying munitions. Germany had published warnings in American newspapers. If passengers ignored those warnings, the responsibility lies with them, and with Cunard, and with the British government that allowed civilians to sail into a war zone. Bernhard Dernburg, Germany's unofficial spokesman in the United States, makes the case publicly. The Lusitania was a war vessel. Germany has the right to prevent contraband going to the Allies. The American reaction is so hostile that Ambassador Johann von Bernstorff quietly advises Dernburg to leave the country. He does. In Munich, a medalist named Karl Goetz channels German sentiment into bronze. He mints a commemorative medal depicting the Lusitania sinking with "no contraband," sarcastically inscribed above the deck, which he shows loaded with armaments. The reverse depicts a skeleton selling tickets at a Cunard counter, the legend reading, "Business above all." Goetz makes an error. He dates the sinking May 5th instead of May 7th. When the medals reach Britain, propagandists seize on the mistake. Proof, they claim, that Germany planned the attack in advance. The error was innocent. Goetz misread a newspaper, but the damage is done. The medal becomes a symbol of German barbarism. Britain's propaganda machine shifts into high gear. Winston Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty, sees opportunity in tragedy. In a private memo, he writes, "The poor babies who perished in the ocean struck a blow at German power more deadly than could have been achieved by the sacrifice of 100,000 men." Cold, calculating, true. Posters blanket Britain. Remember the Lusitania. Enlistment surges. Anti-German riots erupt in London, Liverpool, Manchester. Shops owned by German immigrants are vandalized. Anyone with a German name faces harassment. In Ireland, survivors become recruitment tools. Avenge the Lusitania echoes from Dublin to Cork. But Britain has questions to answer too. Why no naval escort? Why were passengers allowed on a ship carrying munitions? An inquiry convenes under Lord Mersey. Captain Turner testifies, is criticized, but not formally blamed. The full report is never released. Mersey, privately, calls the whole affair a damned dirty business. The summer of 1915 becomes a diplomatic tightrope. More notes pass between Washington and Berlin. Each American demand is met with German deflection. Then on August 19th, a German submarine sinks the SS Arabic. 44 dead, 3 Americans among them. Roosevelt demands war again. Wilson sends more notes. This time, Germany blinks. Kaiser Wilhelm, fearing American entry into the war, orders a halt to unrestricted submarine warfare. The Arabic pledge promises that passenger ships will be warned before attack. Wilson claims a diplomatic victory. The crisis eases temporarily, but nothing is resolved. The Lusitania's dead remain unavenged. The German military seethes at fighting with one hand tied. The British blockade continues strangling German civilians. And in American newspapers, in speeches, in popular memory, 4 words refuse to fade. Remember the Lusitania. Wilson runs for re-election in 1916 on the slogan, "He kept us out of war." He wins. Barely. In Berlin, military planners are already drafting a new strategy. If unrestricted submarine warfare resumes, America will almost certainly join the Allies. But what if Germany could keep America distracted? What if there was another enemy, closer to home, to occupy American attention? They begin composing a telegram. January 1917. Europe is exhausted. 3 years of war, millions dead. The Western Front, a moonscape of trenches, barbed wire, and corpses. Neither side can break through. Neither side will surrender. The war has become a machine that feeds on human bodies and produces nothing but more war. Germany is starving. The British blockade has strangled imports for over 2 years. Civilians survive on turnips and ersatz bread made from sawdust. Malnutrition weakens the population. Disease spreads through cities. By war's end, over 400,000 German civilians will die from the blockade's effects. The generals know they cannot sustain this indefinitely. They need a breakthrough. They believe they have one. On January 9th, 1917, Kaiser Wilhelm convenes a war council at Pless Castle. The military leadership presents their case, resume unrestricted submarine warfare. sink every ship approaching Britain, military, merchant, neutral, passenger, strangle the island the way Britain has strangled Germany. The admirals calculate they can force British surrender within 5 months. The risk is obvious. America will almost certainly declare war. But the generals argue it doesn't matter. American troops can't arrive in meaningful numbers for at least a year. By then, Britain will have collapsed. France will follow. The war will be over before America becomes a factor. It's a gamble. The Kaiser approves it. January 31st, 1917. Germany announces the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare, effective the following day. All ships in the war zone, including neutral vessels, including passenger liners, will be sunk without warning. The Sussex Pledge is dead. The Lusitania rules are back. Wilson responds on February 3rd by severing diplomatic relations with Germany. Not war, not yet, but the next step. Then British intelligence delivers a bombshell. 3 weeks earlier, on January 16th, German Foreign Minister Arthur Zimmermann sent a coded telegram to Heinrich von Eckhardt, Germany's ambassador in Mexico. British codebreakers in room 40 of the Admiralty intercepted and decrypted it. They've been sitting on it, protecting their intelligence capabilities. Now, with unrestricted submarine warfare resumed, they decide to share. On February 24th, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour hands the decoded message to American Ambassador Walter Page. Page reads it again, can barely believe what he's seeing. The telegram proposes a military alliance between Germany and Mexico. If the United States enters the war, Mexico should attack. In return, Germany promises financial support and help recovering lost territory: Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. The message also suggests Mexico invite Japan to join the alliance. It's audacious, it's absurd, it's authentic. Wilson receives the telegram and authorizes its release to the press. On March 1st, 1917, headlines explode across America. Germany seeks alliance against US. Mexico offered American territory. Kaiser plots invasion. The reaction dwarfs even the Lusitania outrage. This isn't distant ships sinking in foreign waters. This is Germany plotting to dismember American soil. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, states with millions of American citizens, offered as bribes to a foreign power. Western states that had been lukewarm about European entanglements now demand action. Isolationists struggle to defend neutrality. Even the most committed pacifists falter. The Zimmermann telegram accomplishes what the Lusitania could not. It makes the war personal for every American. Then Zimmermann does something inexplicable. He confirms the telegram is genuine. No denials, no claims of forgery. I cannot deny it, he tells reporters. It is true. Germany's own foreign minister has confessed to plotting against America. The diplomatic damage is catastrophic. But Wilson still hesitates. He asks Congress for authority to arm merchant ships. He hopes armed neutrality will be enough. It isn't. March 1917. German U-boats sink 5 American merchant vessels: the Algonquin, the Vigilancia, the City of Memphis, the Illinois, the Healton. 21 American sailors die. Armed neutrality has failed. The submarines don't care about diplomatic nuance. March 20th. Wilson convenes his cabinet. Every member, every single one, recommends war. Wilson asks for time to prepare his address. April 2nd, 1917. A joint session of Congress. The chamber packed, galleries overflowing. Wilson approaches the podium. He speaks for 36 minutes. The present German submarine warfare against commerce is a warfare against mankind. It is a war against all nations. He cites the Lusitania by name. He cites the Zimmermann telegram. He cites the deaths of American sailors on American ships. The world must be made safe for democracy. 4 days of debate follow. Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin speaks for 4 hours against intervention. He's nearly alone. The tide has turned. April 4th. The Senate votes 82-6 for war. April 6th. The House votes 373-50. President Wilson signs the declaration. The United States of America is at war with the German Empire, nearly 2 years after the Lusitania sank. But the ghost of that ship hangs over everything. Recruitment posters appear within days. A drowning woman, arm raised, infant clutched to her chest. The words above, enlist. The Lusitania didn't cause the war, but she became its symbol. Every German provocation after May 7th, 1915, built on that foundation. The Arabic, the Sussex, the Zimmermann telegram, the merchant ships. Each one added fuel to a fire the Lusitania had ignited. American mobilization begins immediately. 4 million men will eventually serve. 2 million will ship to France. 116,000 will die, more than in all previous American wars combined. Fresh troops flood the Western Front by summer 1918. Fresh supplies, fresh morale. Germany's gamble fails catastrophically. They cannot win before America arrives. The final German offensive collapses. The Kaiser abdicates. The Empire surrenders. November 11th, 1918. Armistice. The war is over. Among the 20 million dead, Walter Schwieger, the man who fired the torpedo that started America's countdown. His U-88 hit a mine 17 months before the armistice. He never saw the empire he served collapse, but collapse it did, in no small part because one torpedo sank one ship and killed 128 Americans who refused to be forgotten. The war ended, but the questions didn't. What really sank the Lusitania so fast? What was she really carrying? And who, in the end, was truly to blame? The torpedo struck at 2:10 p.m. A second explosion followed within seconds. Every survivor heard it. Captain Turner testified to it. Schwieger recorded it in his war diary. But what caused it? For over a century, the question has haunted historians, divers, and conspiracy theorists alike. Germany's official position was immediate and self-serving. The ammunition in the cargo hold exploded. The Lusitania was carrying munitions. The torpedo detonated them. Therefore, Germany was justified. The ship was a legitimate military target that destroyed itself. Britain denied it just as quickly. The cargo manifest listed small arms ammunition, rifle cartridges, empty shell casings, fuses, non-explosive materials. The Admiralty insisted. Rifle cartridges don't detonate like bombs. Whatever caused the second explosion, it wasn't the declared cargo. The debate has never been resolved. In 1982, divers explored the wreck and found damage inconsistent with a single torpedo strike. The hull showed catastrophic trauma, far more than one German torpedo should have caused. Something else had happened inside that ship. In 1993, Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who discovered the Titanic, led an expedition to the Lusitania. He examined the cargo hold and found it clearly undamaged. No evidence of ammunition explosion. His conclusion: coal dust. The torpedo ruptured the starboard coal bunker. The impact threw coal dust into the air. A spark ignited it. Coal dust explosions can be devastating, powerful enough to destroy mines, collapse buildings, sink ships. But other researchers reject Ballard's findings. In 2008, divers discovered something troubling. Thousands of .303 rifle cartridges in the bow section, in areas where ammunition wasn't supposed to be stored according to the manifest. The rounds were live. They were in the wrong place. Why? The cargo controversy runs deeper than bullets. The official manifest lists 4.2 million rifle cartridges, 1,250 cases of shrapnel shells, and 18 cases of fuses, all declared, all technically legal under the rules of the time. But a supplementary manifest, filed after the ship sailed, shows additional munitions, and whispers have persisted since 1915 that even more was hidden. Cheese, furs, butter, items on the manifest that some historians believe were code words for contraband. The British government has never fully disclosed the Lusitania's complete cargo. In 2014, declassified Foreign Office documents from 1982 revealed internal concerns. Officials worried that salvage operations might uncover a large amount of ammunition in the wreck, some of which is highly dangerous. They feared the discovery would embarrass the government and validate German claims from 7 decades earlier. Greg Bemis, an American entrepreneur, bought the wreck in 1968 for $2,400. He spent the next 50 years trying to prove hidden cargo caused the sinking. He battled the Irish government, the British government, and the Atlantic Ocean itself. He funded dive after dive. He found ammunition where it shouldn't have been. He never found the smoking gun. Bemis died in 2020. The wreck keeps its secrets. Then there's the Churchill question. The conspiracy theory goes like this. Winston Churchill, First Lord of the Admiralty, wanted America in the war. He knew U-boats were hunting in Irish waters. He deliberately denied the Lusitania a naval escort. He sent her into danger knowing she might be sunk, and knowing the deaths of American civilians would drag the United States into the conflict. The evidence cited by conspiracy theorists: no escort was provided despite known submarine activity. HMS Juno was ordered away from rescue operations. Churchill's own memo celebrated the propaganda value of dead children. His later writings blamed Captain Turner, convenient scapegoating to deflect from Admiralty failures. But most historians reject the theory. In 1915, Britain wanted American supplies, not American soldiers. An ally would complicate peace negotiations and demand a voice in post-war settlements. Churchill was preoccupied with the Gallipoli disaster unfolding simultaneously. Admiral Fisher, the first Sea Lord, was near nervous breakdown. The Admiralty was overstretched, disorganized, and negligent, but not murderous. Still, questions linger. Why were Turner's orders vague and sometimes contradictory? Why no specific warning about U-20's location, which British intelligence knew from intercepted communications? The full inquiry report was never released. Lord Mersey's private papers vanished after his death. Enough gaps remain to fuel speculation for another century. The wreck itself offers no easy answers. The Lusitania lies 300 feet underwater, 11 miles south of the old head of Kinsale. She's now an official Irish heritage site. Diving is restricted, monitored by government archaeologists. The wreck is collapsing, a century of saltwater corrosion, ocean currents, and her own weight crushing the decks into one another. She lies on her starboard side, the torpedo wound pressed against the seafloor, inaccessible without major excavation. Fishing nets drape the hull. Depth charges from British naval exercises in later decades litter the debris field. Some claim the Royal Navy deliberately tried to destroy the evidence in the 1950s. Others say routine disposal operations. The truth, like so much about the Lusitania, is murky. Technology may eventually reveal what happened. Submersibles grow more capable every year. Imaging systems can penetrate wreckage that human divers cannot reach. Someday, perhaps, the starboard hull will yield its secrets. But some truths are already clear. A German submarine torpedoed a British passenger liner. The liner was carrying munitions, more than originally admitted, stored in places the manifest didn't specify. Germany had warned passengers not to sail. Britain failed to provide adequate protection. Captain Turner made decisions that defy explanation, sailing slowly, in a straight line, through waters he knew were dangerous. And 1,198 people died, including 128 Americans and 94 children who had no stake in any nation's war. The sinking didn't immediately bring America into the conflict, but it planted something that grew for 2 years, a seed of outrage, watered by subsequent provocations until it finally bloomed into war. The Zimmermann telegram was the last straw. The resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare was the final insult. But the Lusitania was the foundation. Every German aggression afterward was measured against that single afternoon off the Irish coast. Schwieger thought he was sinking an auxiliary cruiser. Turner thought he was commanding a passenger liner. Cunard thought they were making money. The Admiralty thought they were managing a war. Everyone thought they understood the situation. They were all wrong, and the consequences outlived every one of them. The wreck still sits on the ocean floor. Over 800 bodies remain entombed in the darkness. The old head of Kinsale still looks out over calm waters that hold a century of secrets. But the silence of the deep speaks volumes to anyone willing to listen. The old head of Kinsale, Ireland. Today, if you drive down the narrow coastal road and park at the lighthouse, you can stand on the cliffs where fishermen stood on May 7th, 1915. The view hasn't changed. The Atlantic stretches to the horizon, blue and peaceful. Seabirds wheel overhead. 11 miles offshore, beneath 300 feet of cold water, the Lusitania still rests where she fell. The wreck is collapsing now. A century of saltwater corrosion, ocean currents, and the weight of her own structure have crushed her decks into one another. The grand staircase where Alfred Vanderbilt descended to dinner is gone. The dining room where Charles Frohman held court is buried in silt. The promenade where Elbert Hubbard walked with his wife Alice, discussing philosophy and fate, has crumbled into debris scattered across the seafloor. But the dead are still there. Over 800 bodies never recovered. They lie in the darkness where passengers once danced, where children once played, where mothers once held their babies and believed they were safe. This silent memorial speaks 3 lessons that every nation, every leader, every person would do well to remember. Lesson 1. Warnings ignored become disasters repeated. Germany published its warning in 50 American newspapers. The notice appeared beside Cunard's advertisement for the Lusitania's departure. No one could claim ignorance, and yet 1,900 people boarded anyway. Captain Turner called the threat the greatest joke I've heard in many days. Alfred Vanderbilt received a telegram signed Mort, warning him the ship was doomed, and laughed it off. Cunard officials assured passengers that the Lusitania was too fast for any submarine. The arrogance was collective. The consequences were individual. 198 individuals who believed experts, trusted institutions, and dismissed danger as unthinkable. We tell ourselves warnings don't apply to us. We assume someone else is managing the risk. We board the ship because everyone else is boarding. And when the torpedo strikes, we have exactly 18 minutes to realize that experts can be wrong, institutions can fail, and unthinkable things happen all the time. The Lusitania wasn't the first ship sunk in the war zone. 3 vessels went down in the days before she arrived. But warnings are easy to ignore when you're standing in a first-class lounge with champagne in your hand. Lesson 2. Neutrality is not safety. The United States in 1915 desperately wanted to stay out of Europe's war. President Wilson built his entire foreign policy around it. Too proud to fight, he said. But American factories were shipping millions of tons of war materials to Britain. American bankers were financing Allied purchases. American citizens were sailing on British ships through British waters past German submarines. The fiction of neutrality allowed Americans to profit from war while pretending to stand apart from it. The Lusitania shattered that illusion. When the torpedo hit, 128 Americans discovered that you cannot do business with combatants and remain uninvolved. War doesn't respect borders drawn on maps or declarations made in capitals. If your money, your goods, your people are in the fight, then you are in the fight, whether you admit it or not. It took 2 more years, more sinkings, and the Zimmerman telegram for America to finally acknowledge what the Lusitania had already proved. Neutrality is a policy, not a shield, and policies collapse when torpedoes explode. Lesson 3. Consequences outlive decisions. Walter Schwieger spent perhaps 30 seconds deciding to fire. He saw a large ship, 4 funnels, British flag. He calculated the intercept course. He gave the order. 30 seconds of tactical judgment, and 1,198 people died. But the consequences didn't stop at the waterline. That single torpedo created the emotional foundation for American entry into the war. It didn't cause the declaration. That took 2 more years and many more provocations, but it created the memory. Every subsequent German aggression was measured against the Lusitania. When the Zimmerman telegram emerged, Americans remembered the babies who drowned. When U-boats sank more ships, Americans remembered the screams of the dying. When Wilson finally asked Congress for war, he cited the Lusitania by name. The man who fired the torpedo was dead by then. His U-88 hit a mine in September 1917. He never saw Germany's defeat, never witnessed the collapse of the empire he served, never understood how his 30-second decision helped destroy everything he fought for. 4 million American soldiers would eventually cross the Atlantic. 100,000 would die. The balance of power would shift, the war would end, and the peace that followed would plant seeds for an even greater catastrophe 20 years later. All from one torpedo, one decision, one captain who thought he was just doing his job. The aftermath scattered like debris on the tide. Captain Turner survived, but never recovered. The Admiralty tried to blame him, and though he was exonerated, the accusations followed him forever. Winston Churchill repeated them in his memoirs years later. Turner became a recluse, haunted by guilt and public suspicion. He died in 1933, still defending himself against charges that refused to stay buried. Cunard collected the insurance and built new ships. The company never fully acknowledged the munitions in the hold. never released the complete cargo manifest, never admitted how much risk they'd accepted by mixing passengers with war supplies. The German government declared victory, then watched their submarine campaign bring America into the war and seal their doom. The Kaiser abdicated. The empire collapsed. The Treaty of Versailles imposed crushing reparations that would fuel resentment for a generation. And the dead stayed dead. Their graves in Queenstown's Old Church Cemetery still stand, 148 markers, many with no names, just unknown, carved in stone. The coffins were mass-produced, the burials conducted in haste, the mourning cut short by the demands of ongoing war. In some families, entire lines ended that day. Grandmothers and grandchildren, husbands and wives, parents and all their children. The Crompton family. Paul, his wife Gladys, their 6 children, and their nanny. All gone. No survivors, no graves for most of them. Just absence. The Lusitania lies 11 miles off the Irish coast, too deep for casual visitors, too fragile for extensive exploration. Divers who descend report an eerie stillness. No fish, little life, just rusting metal and darkness. The hole where the torpedo struck is buried against the seabed, inaccessible, keeping its secrets. The second explosion that doomed the ship remains unexplained. The full truth may never surface, but what we know is enough. A warning was published and ignored. A ship sailed into danger, carrying passengers and munitions. A submarine captain made a decision in 30 seconds. 18 minutes later, nearly 1,200 people were dead. 2 years after that, America was at war. 4 years after that, 20 million people had perished in the bloodiest conflict in human history. And a generation later, their children would fight an even worse one. The Lusitania didn't start the First World War, but she became its most powerful symbol in America. Proof that distance could not guarantee safety, that neutrality could not prevent involvement, that modern warfare had no boundaries and took no prisoners. Stand on the cliffs at Kinsale today and look out at the peaceful Atlantic. The wreck is out there, invisible, silent, waiting. The dead are out there, unnamed, unmourned by anyone still living. But if you listen carefully, if you let the wind carry the weight of a century, you might hear what the silent memorial is trying to tell us. The next torpedo is always in the water somewhere. The next warning is always being published somewhere. The next decision that changes everything is always being made by someone who doesn't understand what they're setting in motion. The Lusitania sank in 18 minutes. The consequences are still unfolding.